Well, good day. We've got a Ford Mondeo Mk3 to work on today. And this particular car has just failed its MOT. The funny thing is, it's only failed on one item, which is surprising because I thought, it's getting on a bit. And what is it? It's an 03 plate. So, I mean, it's like 17 years old now, nearly. But anyway, this one item it's failed on, I thought I'd make a video on it because it's quite bad. And I did have to laugh, especially that, like, the driver's reaction that he didn't even know. He heard a kind of noise from the back, but wasn't really sure, so just carried on. But look, let me jack it up and show you. Are you ready? I might have to adjust the sensitivity of my microphone so you can hear this better. But just to start off with, we're going to do the rock test on this wheel bearing. So holding the wheel at 6 and 12 o'clock. Can you hear that? Can you hear it? Woohoo! Okay, if that's not bad enough, let's do the noise test now. In 3, 2, 1. You know, I think the driver might have been right, because I was struggling to hear anything, let alone notice anything wrong. Anyway, all joking aside, that's pretty bad. That wheel was literally at the point of it was going to fall off very shortly. I told him I'd put a dangerous failure on his car and he needs to have it done straight away without driving it anywhere. So he decided to have it done. So now I'm going to fix it. So I just whacked these old wheel nuts out. There's always one that gets stuck to the bloody socket, isn't there? I was doing so well. There we go. There's two 13mm bolts that hold the whole brake caliper carrier assembly on. So I'm going to put a 13mm socket and bar and undo them two. And I'll wind these two bolts out. I would say be careful when you're actually undoing them because the heads of these bolts can round off if they get a bit corroded. So you just got to be a little bit careful. That's one. And that's two. Yeah, like I just said, be careful when you're undoing these bolts because them heads get a bit corroded, they can round off, then you're in trouble. Because I'm taking the whole carrier and caliper off of one piece, if you've got a big lip on your brake disc, you might find it might not come off, in which case you've got to take the caliper off separate to the carrier. But this is a little bit rusty, but there's actually not really much of a lip there at all, so this should slide straight off without any problem. Yeah, that's come off quite easily. So that will slide straight back on the disc. Funnily enough, the disc is actually, it's not seized on. I thought I was going to have to belt this off. So it's actually quite free. Oh, I'm impressed. Let's have another little wiggle, shall we? Oh my God. Wow. There's a hole in these hubs that you can put your Torx 50 socket through into the bolt, okay? Now this one was a little bit tight, so I've given this a little bit of a file because it's a little bit corroded in there. And I put a bit of freeing oil in that hole, so now I can put my socket. I haven't got a long Torx 50, so I've only got a short one on a socket. But also want to note, this Torx 50 bolt head, it can get a bit shitty and corroded in there. So you might have to get a screwdriver or an airline or something in there to blow it out. Try and clean it a little bit. These don't look too bad actually. So I'm going to put my socket in there. Give it a tap so I know it's in there properly. I'm going to undo these with a bar. The reason being, if I put an air gun on it, I could just spin it off, so I could spin the head and destroy the end of the head. So I'm going to make sure I can undo these. That's gone. And in actual fact, that wasn't even that tight. That come undone quite easily. I'm actually getting more and more impressed with this car all the time. I always knew the Mark III Mondeos were brilliant cars. Look at that. Bolt comes clean out. Fantastic. There's 4 of these Torx 50 headed bolts that hold your wheel bearing into place. So I'll just pop the other 3 out now. This one here looks particularly shitty. I hope this is going to come out. This is a bad one. I'll clean that head out a bit, get all the crap out of there. Right, this one's a bit dodgy. Let's hope this comes undone. I'm going to push inwards at the same time while I'm trying to undo it. Yes! Thank God for that. So you've got to be so careful undoing these bolts, because if the inside of that Torx head gets stripped, you could be in trouble. But luckily that one's out. I've got one left to get out. They say there's always one, but let's see. Yeah, it's gone. It's undone. We're in luck. There we go. Excellent. So now it's all unbolted, we should just be able to tap it off. There we go. She's off. One last thing. There's an ABS wire at the back here, which you need to disconnect. So I'm going to lift up the tab in the connector, and that's the wire off. I'd have probably been better actually disconnecting this ABS wire before I took the hub off, because I could have actually damaged it there. The thing is, I actually forgot to take it off when I was underneath the vehicle. But anyway, no harm's done, so I'll carry on. Check out the wire brush, eh? All shiny and new. Actually, I'll just move that ABS wire out of the way so I don't get shit in it, and give this a bit of a clean up. And I'll just blow out these threads of an airline just so there's no crap stuck in them. And yeah, I think I can safely say this wheel bearing is dead. That is, you know, that is as rough as hell. But that's how they come on these cars. Complete hub unit with the ABS sensor as well. Right. One Norge, I can't even say it. It's a wheel bearing. There we go. All nicely in cellophane. Oh well, that's it. It's too late now. It's going to start corroding. But yeah, nice new wheel bearing. It's nice and shiny, isn't it? It won't be shiny for long. And take note how your backing plate fits on, because you need to get that on right, otherwise nothing's going to go back together. So you can hold that there with one hand, then the other hand, the ABS sensor sits at the top, 12 o'clock. You will slot that in, whole bearing of hub assembly, and that's it, that's on. Now all we've got to do is bolt it up. Do you know what? I can't frigging believe it. I've just gone to look in the box for the new bolts. There's no new bolts in the box. Jesus flipping Christ. Whenever you buy a bearing, it should come with the bolts to bolt the hub back on. They're not in the box. What am I going to do? Flipping heck, I'm not going to take it back. I haven't got the time. The guy wants his car back. Luckily, these old bolts, the heads aren't too bad. They're okay. If they were that bad, they're not going to go back on, but they're not so bad, so I'm going to put them back on because time is a factor here. I need to get on. You can, if you want, clean these bolt threads up and put a new piece of thread lock on them if you like. I'm going to whack these all in. Right, they're all in now. All I've got to do is whack them down. Now I'm just going to bolt these up nice and tight. If you want to torque these bolts up, they are 70 Newton meters. And the reason I'm doing these by hand or with a torque wrench, because if you're using air gun on these bolts, like I said before, you can quite easily ring off the inside of these heads and just cause yourself loads of problems. So it's best to actually bolt these up with a bar or a torque wrench. That's it. Slap the old brake disc back on. Now, just slide my caliper back on. Here we go. So now I'm going to refit my two 13mm bolts that hold the caliper carrier to the hub. And if you want to go down the route of torquing these two 13mm caliper carrier to hub bolts up, they are 80 Newton meters. But obviously you'd have to clean the threads up and possibly put a little bit of thread lock on them. I'm just going to tighten them up by hand with this bar. And before I forget, reconnect the ABS wire. Make sure that's fully home. Yep. So that's everything back in place. Brake hose is good. All looks all right. Now I'll put the wheel back on. Wata! If this was a steel wheel, I would probably just air gun these nuts up. But because it's an alley wheel, I always do them by hand. I've heard that using air guns on alley wheels, you can crack the alley. I've never had it happen myself, but hey, I guess there's a first time for everything, so I don't really want to take the risk. I'll just nip these wheel bolts up before I actually put the wheel on the ground and tighten them up properly. But how's she looking? Well, it should be okay, shouldn't it? There's no play in this wheel bearing. Oh, that's lovely. Beautiful. Torque setting for these nuts on alley wheels is between 90 and 130 Newton meters, depending on whether you've got conical washers or not on these nuts. Me, I'm just going to whack them up evenly with my 1/2 inch bar. Oh, I know I haven't pushed the caliper piston back or nothing like that, but I've had the brake caliper disconnected. So it's worth just pumping the foot brake anyway, just to be safe. Right then, where do you think this goes? No, you can't put this great big lump of metal in the general waste, for God's sake. Flipping heck. What do you think the scrap man would say? You'd be a bit pissed off. Let's take it to where it belongs, do it properly, in the scrap pile. There you go. That's for the scrap man. Well, that's that then. Mark III Ford Mondeo, rear wheel bearings. If the car's been looked after, chances are that's a nice simple little job. This actually hardly took me less than an hour to do and film at the same time. That shows you how quick you could change a bearing in one of these cars. Right, it's tea time now. So till the next time guys, see ya.